Hello my friends and welcome back to a new week here at Realm News Flash. I am your host, the Dark Lord, the one who puts the real in Realm and expands your mind one block at a time. This week, the Realm News Studio has been buzzing with news in the Minecraft universe. It has been a whirlwind of news being made by what I will call a quote-unquote cousin to Minecraft. Some people refer to it as Minecraft's spiritual successor, but I think it took on its own form and ethos that distinguishes it separately, but not far from Minecraft. I am talking about the much anticipated game called Hytale by Hypixel Studios. Today's Realm News Flash will do its best to make a complete summation on why the game that has been in development for a decade has now been abandoned by its parent company Riot Games. I will first tell you a small history of how Hytale came into existence, its popularity, its cancellation, and chance of resurrection. So, whenever you are ready, let's begin the show by letting me tell you what Hytale is before examining the origins of Hytale in order to show you why it is so close to our beloved game of Minecraft. Also, I want to state that subjects may have changed since the release of this episode. With that said, my friends, let's start the show.
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you are anything like me, then you knew little to nothing about the once work-in-progress game called Hytale, except for the fact that it existed. My knowledge was limited until I became interested in the matter after a series of outcries from devoted fans were heard on various social media platforms and gaming news outlets on June 23rd. The announcement was made in the form of a notice letter posted on Hytale.com's website by CEO Aaron Donahue, informing the community that Hytale had been shut down by its parent company Riot Games after a decade of development. I just threw out a lot of names that you are not familiar with, and I will continue to repeat some key figures today. So let me go ahead and list off the most key figures I will be talking about in reference to Hytale. Simon Collins-Laflamme, the co-founder and original CEO of Hypixel Studios, also owns Hypixel Inc. Philippe Touchette co-founded the Hypixel server. Following the acquisition by Riot Games, Aaron Donahue became the CEO of Hypixel Studios. Riot Games serves as the parent company, offering funding and expertise. With that said, I will get more in depth into the current news surrounding its downfall and possible resurrection of Hytale after I explain to you what Hytale is exactly. According to Hytale.com's own webpage, quote, embark on a journey of adventure and creativity. Hytale combines the scope of a sandbox with the depth of a role-playing game, immersing players in a procedurally generated world where teetering towers and deep dungeons promise rich rewards. Hytale supports everything from block-by-block construction to scripting and mini-game creation, delivered using easy-to-use and powerful tools, end quote. The role-playing aspect of Hytale is a major aspect to what separates this game away from Minecraft. The game Hytale has more nuances and details and graphics. It breaks away from the extreme blocky world that Minecraft presents and goes into realism a bit further and exasperates that with its lore and role-playing, but at the same time keeping the same freedoms that a sandbox game allows, which is the freedom to express yourself through the game's environment and make your own game like you can do in Minecraft. It promised to have all the same elements of Minecraft, but with more customizations and control over the world you are in. To me, if you are all familiar with the game RuneScape, it reminds me of a blend of RuneScape and Minecraft. That's my personal opinion, but I was a huge fan of RuneScape back in the early 2000s, and Hytale screams that at me with the game's role-playing. The thousands of cooking recipes, weapon designs, clothes, creatures, biomes, and everything else that I read about that was going to be in the game reminded me of RuneScape. This may be why I was drawn into Hytale once I started doing the research. But let's backtrack further and see exactly where Hytale roots start. I would like to go ahead and give you a very basic timeline of the evolution of Hytale by starting at the origin, which is Hypixel. You have more than likely heard of Hypixel before you have even heard of Realm News. It is a very popular Minecraft multiplayer server which officially opened to the public on April 13th, 2013. It was founded by Simon Collins-Laflamme, quote-unquote Hypixel, their nickname, who is the CEO, and Philippe Touchette, the CFO, who focused on creating mini-games such as Bed Wars, Sky Wars, Murder Mystery, and many more, which popularized the server. There are two other shareholders who have never been mentioned publicly, or not from what I can see in my research, who according to Canadian Federal Corporation Information business filings that are made publicly are Eric Lefebvre and Carol Collins. It appears that each of the four shareholders holds 25% or more of Hypixel Incorporated, which manages the Hypixel Minecraft server. I just wanted to clarify that so we know the owners or controllers of the company that led to the birth of Hytale, or that eventually led to Hytale, because Hytale eventually spawned from Hypixel server down the line. Anyways, besides the mini games, the Hypixel server grew exponentially thanks to the unique take they provided to Minecraft. According to an article found at GameRant.com by Jen Simpkins, published February 24th, 2020, entitled First Look, Hytale is putting adventure and creativity at the heart of its ambitious block building sandbox. Says, quote, Collins-Laflamme and Touchette decided to run a server that would function as a playable library of all their adventure maps, where players could simply join the server to access a suite of games, end quote. But they soon discovered that their adventure maps were extremely popular and that people were literally waiting in online queues to play them. So, Collins-Laflamme and Touchette came up with an ingenious way to let players pass the time while they waited to access the adventure maps. They created those aforementioned mini games so people could play those while in the lobby waiting for the maps. These mini games took on a life of their own and became extremely popular, which helped boost this server into popularity. The article goes on to describe that life was good for the brand new company that was welcoming in millions of new clients on its server thanks to these mini games, and they were earning enough money to support the server itself and the 40 employees that they had running it. This all nearly came to a crashing halt on June 12th, 2014, when Mojang decided to start to enforce old rules. The enforcements came through something called EULA, or End User Licensing Agreement, stating that server providers can accept donations from players, but cannot charge for items or power-ups that would give players advantages in the game world. The sudden enforcement was in reaction to the crisis that was occurring in online gaming in the form of something called DDoS attacks, which is an acronym standing for Distributed Denial of Service. The Manet botnet was the most famous of these attacks and is one excuse for why Minecraft decided to suddenly enforce EULA after 3 years. Just 1 month after Realms was made public. EULA resulted in an 85% loss in revenue to Hypixel Inc. I may end up making an entire episode over the once highly debated EULA enforcement of 24 2014 because that set in motion a series of events that is still affecting Minecraft today through realms. That's neither here nor there today, though. Anyways, with the 85% revenue decrease, Hypixel Inc. started to think outside the block for a new revenue stream. They were essentially seeking their freedom from Minecraft, which is ironic because without Minecraft, Hypixel would have never existed. I must go ahead and state right away that Hypixel Inc. has been unaffected by Hytale's closure. The Hypixel server is completely separate from Hytale and is still just as popular as it was before Hytale's closing. Perhaps it's even more popular due to the increased attention now. Let's move on to the year 2015. In the year 2015, Hypixel Inc. was on the search to break away from Minecraft by starting its own IP game in the form of a voxel game / platform. They did so by splitting Hypixel Inc. and formed a separate entity that we know as Hypixel Studios that was in charge of Hytale. Hypixel Studios realized that they would have to create a whole new game engine from scratch in order to create the game that they all had envisioned. It is kind of funny because initially the team wanted to go a drastically different direction by making a quote-unquote 2D top-down shooter game. But they realized that they had all this expertise in the blocky Minecraft world and decided to stick with their know-how and kept with that form of blocky aesthetics. Then, 3 years later, things changed again. While Hypixel was starting to drift from Minecraft modding to fully assembling the new game Hytale, another game entered the market space called Fortnite. Fortnite's Battle Royale craze literally took away half of Hypixel's Minecraft server player count, thus leaving the shareholders to scramble for a way to find revenue. This forced them to revisit investors and connections they made in response to the 2014 EULA enforcement by Mojang. This led them to their future business venture with Riot Games. This brings me to the year 2018. They were successful in finding investors. In fact, according to RiotGames.com, Hypixel Studios was officially founded in 2018 with a staff of 40 developers and backed by several angel investors, including Riot Games. Riot Games was more than just a funder. They also served as advisors who, according to Dylan Jadeja, president of Riot Games, said, quote, "Over the last 18 months, we've been fortunate to advise Hypixel Studios as they build toward their vision for evolving a game genre that reaches an incredibly diverse range of players around the globe. Now, as they prepare to enter the next chapter, we're thrilled to take our partnership to the next level through this acquisition. We look forward to supporting Hypixel Studios' journey through the development process, helping them grow and learning from them as well." End quote. This leads me to my next date in the timeline where Riot Games fully acquires Hypixel Studios, which is April 16th, 2020. I know I'm jumping through the dates, but this timeline is essential for you to understand the evolution of Hytale. Fraser Brown's April 16th, 2020 article titled "Riot Games Acquires Hytale Developer Hypixel Studios" has a quote from Simon Collins-Laflamme in light of the acquisition. Quote, "We'll continue to operate in the same way as we have before, but Riot will become our parent company, and we'll gain access to their expertise and resources. This means a bigger budget for Hytale, more security for our team, and advisory support from a company that knows how to launch and operate successful, long-running games." End quote. At this point in time, Aaron Noxie Donahue became CEO, replacing Simon Collins-Laflamme after he stepped down. Remember, Hypixel server remains separate under Hypixel Inc., in which Laflamme is still a co-owner. As you can tell from the statement I just read to you, it appears that Hytale was off to a great start. Riot Games had the experience of producing successful games like League of Legends and other titles like Legends of Runeterra, Teamfight Tactics, and Valorant. They are considered a major studio. Hypixel Studios had a great synergy amongst its team, so it looked like everything was lining up in favor of Hytale, which at this point in time was expecting to release in a year later, 2021, which we all know did not occur. I should go ahead and mention a relevant and important announcement which was made in a post on Twitter, now X, published by Simon Collins-Laflamme at 7:08 a.m. on Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, 2 days after Hytale's a difficult update announcement that sheds a new perspective on the Riot Games acquisition of Hytale. Allow me to read a part of what he wrote on X of him reflecting back at this exact moment in time where Riot Games acquired Hypixel Studios. Quote, "Then, I think the pressure of having the Riot Games label, a mega viral trailer, bigger funding, and higher expectations made us all doubt ourselves back then. On a personal level, I couldn't live up to these new high expectations and was given an option to leave by Riot. The team was so good that I felt like an imposter at that point. Given my limited quote-unquote real game development experience, it was good for me to leave and I agreed. Even still today, I agree with that decision and I completely understand how that came to be. I wanted to give the team a better chance of success and not hold them back. Riot has been good to me during that process, and I appreciate it. They are truly a great company and gave so much freedom to the team. However, for me, it has been a grieving process to walk away from such an extraordinary opportunity." End quote. I thought that was important to share with you because it shows what was going on in the co-founder of Hypixel Studios' mind at the time. It also shows us that he still respects Riot Games even after the wake of Hytale's annihilation. I would like to say that Fraser Brown's article points out that the team was aware of a term called scope creep. With the acquisition and backing from Riot Games, the team was now able to scale up the scope of the project to make it even better. But this seemed to have gone away, or quote-unquote creeped away from them. Scope creep can often be an issue that kills projects. According to Wikipedia.com, scope creep is, quote, "can occur when the scope of a project is not properly defined, documented, or controlled. It is usually considered harmful." Or uncontrolled growth in a project's scope generally experienced after the project begins. End quote. I will say this now, but it has been theorized online by people on the X, or on Twitter, now X, that scope creep may have been what led to Hytale's demise. I would like to leave the year 2020 by saying that this was an extremely exciting year for the Hypixel Studio team and for Riot Games. I included the Laflamme quote as a retroactive comparison and insight into his thoughts on the matter at the time. I would like to now present the story from our current point of view where Hytale no longer exists, but there may be hope, and that hope may come in the form of its old founder Laflamme and from the familiar creator of the popular video game Stardew Valley. On Monday, June 23rd, 2025, millions of people around the world were alerted by the Aaron Noxie Donahue, CEO of Hypixels on Hytale.com in the quote-unquote a difficult update letter that Hytale was going to, quote, ending development on Hytale and beginning the process of winding down Hypixel Studios over the next few months, end quote. This sent their fans reeling, and the internet exploded with confusion and utter devastation. You know, as a Minecraft fan, that we are a tight-knit, abundantly passionate community when it comes to our beloved game. Well, the Hytale community is no different, if not more so. Allow me to list off the reasons presented by the CEO, Noxy, and represent Riot Games sentiments for the reasons why Hytale is no longer a game being developed. Remember the definition I gave you over scope creep while I tell you these points made in Noxy's notification. I'm going to read off some quotes. Quote, over time as our vision evolved and the genre matured around us, the bar kept rising. Our technical ambitions grew more complex, and even after a major reboot of the game engine, the team found that Hytale still wasn't as far along as it needed to be. It became clear we'd need a lot more time to get it to place where it could support the ambitious vision for the game, end quote. If that is not the exact definition of scope creep, then I don't know what is. I just don't. I mean, seriously, folks. It sounds like the team got caught in a loop of constant perfectionism and endless goals. Noxy proceeds to say in the update, quote, we looked at reducing scope, adjusting timelines, and finding new angles to keep moving forward. But each of these options would have meant compromising on what made Hytale special in the first place. It wouldn't have been the game we set out to make, and it wouldn't have been the game you deserve, end quote. Simon Collins-Laflamme, in the same tweet I read from earlier, speculates that the failure of Hytale or the scope creep may not have been per se directly Noxy's fault, but perhaps the people who he hired. Quote, as for Noxy, I have known him for 14 years now, and I think people are quick to blame everything on him for the wrong reasons. Yes, ultimately he's responsible as the CEO, but I feel like it's because Noxy trusted and hired quote-unquote real producers with quote-unquote real game experience from the game industry and let them drive the project into something else with bigger plans. And they started to rewrite a ton of features, systems, and even the engine, as if they wanted to appropriate the game to themselves to prove to the world/Riot they were better, end quote. If this is the case, then this is a tale of ego and pride leading to failure, or in this case, the death of a decade-long vision. Laflamme goes on to say in that tweet in his own speculation that access to exorbitant funding, heightened expectations from the public led to the hiring of professional developers who went ahead and took the project into their own hands and direction. And that led to the hiring of new devs who did the same thing that created this never-ending destructive loop. This ongoing destructive loop was also a financial pit where Riot Games was just throwing money into a game that was stuck in an infinite phase of development. They didn't even produce any demos or beta versions for the public to play. I think you can still sign up for the beta. The community has been begging them to just release something even if it isn't fully functional. The Hytale community argues that anything would be better than delivering nothing after 10 years. The June 25th tweet ended with Laflamme expressing his concerns about his friend Noxy and how he is upset with people bashing him over this. This was one of Laflamme's longest posts made since Hytale has disintegrated, and you can tell that he is truly passionate about what has occurred. This leads me to what I would like to talk about next in the Hytale story. I will go ahead and title this section of the episode, Hope. Simon Collins-Laflamme has raised a lot of concern over the downfall of Hytale. It is, of course, understandable that the former CEO would be attached to the game and the community that helped him get to where he is today, and he expresses that in his tweets. On June 25th, he tweeted, quote, "It's sad that no one will be able to experience the music, art, and sounds coming from together in Hytale. There are no other games like this. The talented builders, artists, composers, and everyone else were truly the greatest creatives I have ever met. You would just wander in game for hours, immersed in this beautiful world that felt like home. The amount of content the game had was immense, and that was my experience 5+ years ago. So imagine today," end quote. That was just part of a longer tweet, but you get the gist of how passionate he is about this project. He is so passionate that he was quick to say that he is willing to put $25 million of his own money without any other investors, Kickstarters, or angel investors. One day later, on June 26, in reaction to a Twitter user named Tubbo, he said, quote, "I get it 100%. Look, I am even down to put $25 million USD by myself to finish Hytale. That's how much I believe in it. No Kickstarter, just raw passion, high pressure, and high risk taking. Reduced scope, legacy engine, PC only first, open source some parts, small team, cut unfinished, features to accelerate towards beta. Give players an ASAP to support development. I even already have a dozen Hytale legacy engine veterans working with me. That's what I would do, but I have not reached out. I'm just thinking about it now because of the bullying. Haha. This would be a massive challenge and impact all aspects of my life. So I would probably need to consult with my family first." End quote. And he even has a rudimentary plan that he listed off right there in that, if he does end up purchasing Hytale, and a caveat in the following tweet made just 2 days later on June 28th. Quote, "To clarify, I would require a lot less money to get to something that could be released in quote unquote very early access with temporarily removed features. We could just get the community involved ASAP in modding /bug reports /feature requests /crowdfunding and find ways to use shared source and open source with cash bounties to speed up production and keep the team relatively small. Guys, please, this is important. Keep your expectations extremely low because usually when large companies shut down a project like this, the chances of revival are next to impossible. Yes, I made the decision. I will give my best to save Hytale. Even if it's a 1% chance, it's the least I can do to the same community that gave me the opportunity to be where I am today. I will reach out. However, remember, it will take a while. Give it some time. It will take months to get answers and months to get done. I will share as much as possible as I go through the process." End quote. I must say, from a personal point of view, I am extremely impressed with Mr. Laflamme's comportment and his passion towards the Hytale community for the developers and the ecosystem that surrounds Hytale. It really does show in his tweets. And I know that I read off way too many tweets in this episode, but I honestly felt necessary for you to get the raw energy that is coming from the annihilation or closure of Hytale. Millions of players around the world are showing their support over the loss of this game. In fact, there has been an online petition made to get Hytale to be released as an open source game to the public. The people want it so they can finish it or have a version of it to play with. The petition, which I went ahead and signed, is found at change.org, which is a reputable petition site. The petition is titled Open Source Any Playable Build of Hytale. So far, it has garnered 1,675 votes, and I looked at that at Sunday, the 29th at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that, just to give you the time frame, that's where the votes were at when I looked at it. People are also leaving heartfelt comments and even videos expressing their sadness over this loss. Actually, many of the comments sound like someone who has lost a loved one. Allow me to read a couple of them. This one comes from Braylon, who says, quote, "Waited years for this, and I can't just let it go. It feels like a family member that's been in the hospital and has been getting better from a serious illness, and the next day they call you and tell you she or he's dead. If they release the community to finish this project, it would mean a lot to me," end quote. Another person named Elliot says, quote, "Been waiting for years for this. Seeing this trailer for the first time was simply epic. For the game to be canceled is insane to think about. Sell this back to Simon. Sell it to the community. Please, Riot, give us the chance to let this game thrive," end quote. As you can hear from the comments read, people are seriously troubled by the loss of Hytale. The craziest part about all of this is that these millions of people have never even played the game. All they have seen is one demo trailer and a bunch of really great concept art that has sprung up, and from this concept art and the trailer alone, 2 podcasts have been formed around this. like Realm News is formed for Minecraft. Yes, 2 podcasts formed just from concept art and talk and speculation, and many other fan-based entertainment has popped up around this, which is simply amazing. I will be, of course, leaving change.org's petition on this, along with all the tweet links and other sources, all in the show description for you to access. I would like to end today's episode, or my attempt to explain the evolution of Hytale and its demise and hopeful rebirth, with another story of a famous developer who has their eye on Hytale and may help. I am referring to ConcernedApe, the creator of Stardew Valley. In an article titled "Stardew Valley's ConcernedApe reportedly says he could possibly step in to save canceled Minecraft like Hytale, but he'd need to know why it failed first," published June 29th by Collins-Laflamme, says that Eric ConcernedApe Baron may quote-unquote possibly make an investment in Hytale in order to help salvage the dead game, but only after he does some more investigation into the reasoning of why it failed and analyzes the finances before investing millions of dollars into it. Quote, "Have to hear more about what the plan is, why it failed initially, behind the scenes, etc." End quote. So, with ConcernedApe, Simon Collins-Laflamme, the millions of devoted fans, the petition, and other interested groups, there may actually be hope for Hytale. I'd like to see Hytale rise like a phoenix from the ashes. This story captivated me from the moment I heard the news of it being closed down. Something about all the years of hard work and the amount of passion that was placed into what they have made so far, for it to just disappear like that just doesn't sit right with me. Even if Laflamme, ConcernedApe, or other investors look at the books and decide not to move forward with reviving Hytale, I hope that Riot Games will at least go ahead and make it open source, or deliver some portion of it to the public. With that said, my friends, that is all I have today on this week's Realm News Flash covering the fall of Hytale. I hope this was informative. My goal for this episode was not to only catch you up to speed on current events within the Minecraft universe, but to also give you a background into how Hytale was conceived and how it ended. One can say that Hytale was forged in response to Minecraft regulations being tightened in the form of EULA back in 2014, and then 4 years later, Fortnite entering the market space, taking away half of Hypixel Minecraft servers players. Scope creep came along with the hiring of eager, ego-driven developers may have led to the downfall of the game. That's all speculation. This story has just started to unfold, and there will be much more to report on in the future, and I assure you that Realm News will be there to report on it. With that said, I wish you all a great rest of your day and week, and happy crafting. The Dark Lord, signing out. Hey, Realm News fans, it's your host, the Dark Lord, the one who puts the real in Realm and expands your mind one block at a time. I am here to tell you that your support means everything. Spread the word by telling friends, liking, and commenting on Spotify or Good Pods. Find me on X, Blue Sky, Reddit, or via email at bio.link/realm news. For more content, join my Patreon at the Copper, Diamond, and VIP tiers for early episodes, bonus content, and newsletters. Find out more at bio.link/realm news. No pressure, though. Just keep listening, liking, and sharing. That's more than enough. Happy crafting, and see you at the next Realm News.